Okay, thank you for that. Welcome to Senate Revenue. It is officially deadline week, the end of the week, and we are going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Dennis.
Here.
Senator Ratty.
Here.
Senator Kiekefer.
Here.
Senator Sievers-Gansett.
Here.
Chair Neal.
Here. All right, so we are going to start with the work session. We have 4 bills on work session, and then we'll have some additional bills, but we have to hear those first. So I will go ahead and turn the work session over to Mr. Reel, who will start with SB 235. And we do have Senator Harris on for some clarifying questions because she did send an amendment. I'm hoping everybody got it. And I shared an email clarifying her intent on where she's going. Mr. Reel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Joe Reel, Deputy Fiscal Analyst at the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Counsel Bureau. Committee, you have work session documents available in Nellis. First bill on work session today is Senate Bill 235. Revises provisions relating to cannabis, sponsored by Senator Harris and heard in this committee on April 1st. Senate Bill 235 has introduced, authorized a person who holds a medical cannabis establishment license or a medical cannabis dispensary on January 1st, 2022 to on or before June 1st of 2022 to submit an application to the Cannabis Compliance Board to convert the license to an adult use cannabis establishment license or an adult use cannabis retail store. The bill requires the board to adopt regulations governing such a conversion, including without limitation the establishment of a fee for the conversion. If the board approves the application, the person is required to surrender the medical establishment license or a medical cannabis dispensary and is issued an adult use cannabis establishment license or an adult use cannabis retail store. The bill also requires an adult use cannabis retail store that is not a dual licensee that wishes to acquire and sell cannabis for medical use of cannabis and medical cannabis products to submit a request to the Cannabis Compliance Board. And if the board approves the request, the bill deems the adult use cannabis retail store to be an a dual license and authorizes the retail store to engage in the acquisition and sale of cannabis for medical use of cannabis and medical cannabis products to the same extent as if the retail store held a medical cannabis establishment license or a medical cannabis dispensary, and would also be subject to the same requirements imposed on a dual licensee. The work session summarizes the individuals that testified in support and opposition of the measure. And in the amendments on page 2 of the work session document, there are 2 referenced amendments. One, Senator Harris presented to the committee during the hearing on the bill, and subsequent to the hearing, a second amendment was submitted as well. So I'll walk through both of those amendments just so the committee understands what was presented. The amendment 1, which was submitted during the hearing on the bill, the first item clarifies that the language in the bill ensures sufficient implementation of the intent, would allow all holders of an adult use cannabis establishment license for an adult use cannabis retail store to sell medical cannabis products without the requirement to hold a medical cannabis establishment license for a medical cannabis dispensary, subject to all applicable rules regarding the sale of medical cannabis products, and sunset the authority to issue new medical cannabis establishment license for medical cannabis dispensaries. During the sunset period, prohibit new licenses except in local jurisdictions that have not reached the cap set forth in NRS 678B 220. Number 2 would authorize the Cannabis Compliance Board to issue a single adult use cannabis establishment license for an adult use cannabis retail store to an applicant that meets the following requirements. You can see the 5 identified requirements there in the work session document. I won't go through all of those. Number 3, the CCB's authority to accept applications for licenses described in number 2 shall commence on the effective date of the act and expire on December 31st, 2022. Number 4 would provide that the provisions of 678B 260 do not apply to licenses issued pursuant to number 2 in the proposed amendment. And then number 5, under future licensing applications, would define a social equity applicant as an applicant that has been adversely affected by provisions of previous laws which criminalize activity relating to cannabis, including without limitation adverse effects on an owner, officer or board member of the applicant, or on the geographic area in which the applicant will operate. Number 6 would require the Cannabis Compliance Board to adopt regulations that establish the criteria for determining whether an applicant qualifies as a social equity applicant. Number 7 would require the Cannabis Compliance Board to adopt regulations governing all future competitive application processes. You can see the 10 different items there that are listed in terms of the regulations that would be required. Number 8 would remove the requirement in statute remove the requirement in statute and the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board regulations that owners, officers, board members, and employees of cannabis establishments must not have been convicted of an excluded felony offense. And beginning March 1st, 2022, the CCB shall study the market demand and determine how many licenses will be awarded in the future licensing round. And the CCB should complete the study of work demand by February 1st, 2023. And if the CCB determines that market demand warrants additional licenses, the CCB shall offer a competitive merit-based licensing round open to any interested market participant not later than July 1st, 2023, pursuant to the regulations established in number 7 of this proposed amendment. So following that, you'll see amendment number 2, which was submitted after the hearing. With respect to this amendment, there are a lot of similarities, so I'll just try to highlight the differences between these two. With respect to the first amendment and the amendment number 2, item 1, the first 2 items referenced are the same as in amendment number 1 of the bullet points. The new item is the bulleted point that requires CCB to develop regulations to facilitate the transition. Otherwise, item 1 is the same. The items under 2, 3, and 4 of the amendment 1 are deleted in amendment number 2. And then all the items under future licensing applications, items 2 through 7 in amendment number 2 that is before you are the same as in the amendment number 1. In terms of numbers 5 through 7 in Amendment 1 are the same as what you see here is 5 through 10 and 1 are the same as what you see here is 2 through 7. And then finally, in the Second Amendment, one additional item that is there is allow the CCB to set proper licensing cap through regulation after February 1st, 2023, which is the item number 8 under number 4 in the new amendment. And those are the proposed amendments. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, any questions on SB 235 amendment? Is that everybody is processing or no questions? Okay, so I will accept a motion.
Vice Chair.
Yeah. Senator Ratty.
I just think probably just important to get that on the record. So does the bill as amended, so first is the recommendation to accept amendment number 2?
Yes, that is, yes.
Okay.
And Chair Neal, if I may.
So Vice Chair Ratty, Senator Harris.
I want to note you all have an amendment in front of you. I believe it is slightly different than the one that Mr. Reel just ran through. I would be more than happy to discuss that amendment and any questions on that if the committee has any. What you see before you is the reflection of some conversations with the Cannabis Compliance Board. We're trying to streamline a single license for all establishment types, cultivation, production, and the retail. The CCB would be, of course, in charge of facilitating that transition. The amendment largely remains the same other than that.
All right, so for clarifying questions, I have amendment number 1 and amendment number 2. Are you suggesting that there's amendment number 3?
I am, Chair Ratty. Amendment number 3 is what you should have delivered to you and is what was sent in the most recent email from Chair Neal.
I don't believe that I have that in front of me, so we may need to
So there was an email probably about 45 minutes ago sent.
And Ms. Briscoe may have a copy for you, Chair Ratty. I had my legislative assistant kind of hand her amendments to.
So this is what we're gonna do, because I don't know if everybody saw that amendment. I've sent it to everyone's email because I felt like clarifying some things need to be clarified. So what we'll do is pause on 235, let everybody review that, and then we'll come back to it. And
I will hang around to answer questions when you get back to it.
Yeah. I didn't know it was drastically different. I thought it was just, you were just clarifying the intent of the second amendment.
It does. The only difference is in point 1, the Cannabis Compliance Board has asked for not to say that adult use licenses will become medical, but they're going to create just a single use license called a cannabis established license. It streamlines the administrative process, but accomplishes the same task of moving us away from a dual license to a single license.
Okay. So, yeah, because I thought it was just clarifying Amendment 2. So we'll take a pause on SB 235, let everybody read that email, look at that third amendment, which adds the single use license. But the rest of the amendment 2 is the same. And so we're just going to pause there and let everybody look at that so you can make a decision about how you actually want to vote on this policy, and there's complete clarity. Hello? Who's talking?
Madam Chair, this is Senator Dennis.
Yeah.
So what email am I looking for?
So there was an email that had SB 235 that came about 40 minutes ago into your email, to your legislative email, with Senator Harris clarifying her intent.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Chair Neal, if I could suggest that staff post it, because I think it's some, for transparency's sake, we probably need to get that posted.
Staff Joe Reel.
Yeah.
It has been posted to Nellis under today's agenda item, and it's the last exhibit, conceptual amendment to SB 235.
And Chair Neal, if I may, I just resent it to all of the committee members. It should be at the top of your inbox.
Yeah. So Senator, I have it, and I think it's less the challenge of it's the labeling. So once they were all printed out, there was no way to tell which one was the one that came when. So
understood.
What I think is most important is that staff and legal counsel know which one we've accepted, so that when we get to the drafting that we're getting the appropriate details. So it's probably a good reminder for all of us that labeling is important. Date and timestamp maybe at this point in the session. So as Chair, I'm not necessarily, I started the questioning. I'm not necessarily needing to hold up the work session on this. I know we have the correct amendment now. I appreciate Senator Sievers-Ganser making sure that it is also available to the public. If what Senator Harris is saying is that beyond what, let me say it back to you to make sure I can get it, beyond what Mr. Reel went through, this also makes all of those individuals who got a new license that was adult use only would now be eligible to add a medical license to that existing license. Is that what it does?
What it does, Chair Ratty, is at this point creates what's called a cannabis establishment license and will transition us to just a single license. And so it doesn't create any additional licenses of sorts, but transitions to a point where everyone will just hold one cannabis establishment license.
So for members of the public, if they go to that establishment, then they can purchase medical, if it's actual medical product, or they can purchase recreational and get the 10% tax discount.
As long as they have the appropriate medical card. Yes, that's correct, Chair Ratty.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair, yes.
So members, any additional questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Kekeffer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know the city of Fallon has been specifically interested in ensuring that they protect their ability to regulate the industries in their jurisdiction, or the establishments in their jurisdiction, to maintain their medical-only facility. If we shift to a single license, is it your intent that they retain that ability?
Thank you for the question, Senator Kekeffer. So it's my understanding that local jurisdictions still maintain the ability to approve zoning and a couple of other regulations that they can place upon these establishments before they can be approved. And approval by the local jurisdiction is a prerequisite. And so I believe the city of Fallon has some tools that they could use to still keep their establishment medical only. But I think that's a legal question, and I would hope Mr. Klimas maybe could jump on and if he has any ideas of how the CCB would facilitate the transition and ensure that, you know, local control remains. I'd be happy to hear his thoughts as well.
CCB, Mr. Klimas, can you chime in? Because my goal and my intent was just, I thought I was getting clarifying language on Amendment 2. And so I really need you to say some more right now.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Tyler Klimas, for the record, and Executive Director of the Cannabis Compliance Board. We're here neutral, but happy to answer any questions. And Senator, thanks for your question. Looking at this concept on the amendment, yes, a local jurisdiction would have authority to still restrict and ensure that in Fallon's case, the city of Fallon's case, that they could continue to sell only medical, even under a single cannabis establishment license.
So a license that would be issued by CCB that is a single license for a cannabis establishment, would you condition that license based on the approvals of the local jurisdiction? Well, I mean, I know that you issue licenses now provisionally. They have to go to the local jurisdictions to get their approval, and then you perfect them, right? So would the type of product eligible to be sold be a condition of the license that you issue?
Senator Tyler Klimas, for the record, I think it's a good question, probably something we'd have to figure out in the statute. All I would say is, from the CCB's perspective, is if this was to go forward, it would not try to supersede any local desire to only have medical product being sold. The mechanics of which we would probably have to figure out how that would look, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Tyler, I'm sorry, Mr. Klimas, you said something we need to figure out in statute. Did you mean reg?
Yeah, I guess it would be in regulation. Again, I'd probably defer to LCB counsel or legal counsel on that. Either or, whatever the best path forward is to figure that part out, we would ensure that protection's in place.
And Senator Kekeffer, if I can, I would suggest, it is my intent to have the CCB through regulation implement the statute. And so I would be asking them to facilitate this transition to a single-use license process. Because, of course, that's where the expertise lies.
In Tyler Klimas, for the record, if I may, and Senator, just back to that, there'll also probably be a role to play for the locals in their ordinance as well. But something that wouldn't happen overnight, something that would happen through the regulatory process. And so there'd be plenty of no's.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, because I wanted to make sure that any new activity was happening under CCB. It was happening under the discretion. There were no more workarounds. That there was going to be a process that individuals walk through under CCB new regs or changes. I think there are some things to be worked out, but okay. Any additional questions?
Madam Chair, what-
Question.
Yeah, Senator, is it Kekef or Severs Ganser?
Here's the answer.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I don't mean you sound like this, but I know.
That's what I was thinking.
No, I'm sorry. No.
Or vice versa. Thanks, Chair Neal. So I wanted to get a little more information about dispensaries and the upcoming dispensaries. So my understanding is we have 81 right now, and there's 50 more to be planned. Have the decisions already been made as far as who's going to have those licenses for those dispensaries, or would this this legislation pertain to, especially around the social equity piece?
Senator Dallas Harris, for the record, to you, Senator Severs Ganser, through you, Chair Neal. It is my understanding that those 50 licenses are currently in a conditional status where they're awaiting perfection. And so the question would be, what would happen if they do not perfect? And that I am assuming would go through the new open process that would be established under the CCB's regulations. If those 50 do perfect, then they already, of course, have the licenses. And then what you would see moving forward is the CCB doing a market analysis to determine how many more licenses the market can bear. And then those licenses would be opened up in a competitive round pursuant to the new regulations that will be put into place.
Thank you. And, kind of circling back to the issue around Fallon, I'm still a bit concerned that we would be using a regulatory process versus statute to make sure that local communities and their ordinances can manage or set up basically what type of establishments they want. Because I understand, I think having a license that for areas that want to have both is fine. But if you do have a municipality or an area where they just want one, they just want the medical, I want to make sure that they have that. And regulations can change and move around, but statute can't. So and I don't know whether we already have that in statute that the local ordinance sort of trumps when it comes to a local, again, when you're down to the local level, not the state level. Thank you.
And if I can, Chair Neal, to you, Senator Severs Ganser, I would just say, the industry is changing. I think that's a bit of why we want to kind of allow the regulatory process to kick into play. And currently, it's changed so much that there's really only, I think, one identifiable establishment that is medical only today, and it is the one in Fallon. So that model is evolving. And I think that's what this legislation is designed to do, is to keep up with with our industry.
Okay. Any Senator Kekeffer?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to change the topic a little bit. I apologize. So, Mr. Klimas, if currently people who hold, you call it a dual license, but I don't think there really is such a thing. So are the people who have what we call dual licenses right now, do they have both a medical and an adult use license?
Senator Tyler Klimas, for the record, that's correct. And I believe it is a defined term in statute, dual license.
Okay, so they hold two licenses. Do they pay two license fees then?
Tyler Klimas, for the record, yes, they do.
So if we move to the single license, it'll cut license revenue in half potentially?
Senator, thanks, Tyler Klimas, for the record. Yes, that is correct. They would, not necessarily in half. There is a renewal fee for a medical and a recreational, depending on what the establishment type is. But yes, that is correct.
Okay. You by chance know how much money that is? I don't know how much revenue we bring in off licensing fees versus, obviously most of it's coming through excise tax and things like that come in from the industry. So I just don't know.
Senator Tyler Klimas, for the record, it's considerable, and I can get you the amount, but I think if you were to envision this moving forward. I think it would be certainly reasonable to consider addressing that fee in the single establishment license, therefore increasing the fee if it's going to be one license to ensure that you don't lose any revenue. I think that would probably something important to consider.
Do you currently, the board currently has authority to set those fees?
Those fees are, Tyler Climas for the record, those fees are set in statute, so it would require a corresponding statute change for those fees.
So, wait a minute. Sorry, Senator Kika. But, okay, let me get this all the way together, because now I'm having an issue. So, you're going to, because that means that there's additional statutory language that should be adopted, because number one, you're going to be changing a fee structure that I don't think other people had a chance to weigh in on, number one, within the statutory construct of this bill. Two, going to the single use license, my understanding, it's not just a fee. I think there's a little bit more that's wrapped into when you start combining and say there's one license. And so that is not an issue that has been vetted where individuals could weigh in and speak their piece in opposition or support on this new conversation that we're having right now. Are we recognizing that? Because I'm recognizing that.
Well, Chair Neal, this is Senator Dallas Harris for the record. The idea of what the proper license fee should be, if we move to a single license, is not a discussion that the committee has had. But the idea of moving to a single license was part of the original hearing.
So, yeah, but the way that the original bill was more of a workaround to just get an additional license without having to go back through CCB. That's how I took the original bill. So this is a different construct, and I think it also has a different fiscal impact. And I'm more worried about the fiscal impact being this revenue, right? So we need to think about that, and we need to pause on that, because I think that's a little bit more than saying this is just I just think this is a new issue that individuals should have a role in or a conversation about. So something's got to give, right? So this bill moves out. It goes to another committee. You're going to need to vet this new language with a full hearing, because that's my concern and that's my issue. It's new enough. It's not clarifying. We're not clarifying. We're adding something new that people have not been able to process, vet, and ask questions about in a hearing.
And well, Chair Neal, the way I interpreted the amendment that we heard in the committee is number 0.1 is similar to the 0.1 we have now. We're just changing the way that we transition to a single-use license. What you were referring to about the creating the new licenses was sections 2 through 4, which have been removed from the version that's in front of the committee today. And so 0.1 of facilitating a transition away from this dual license structure was always a part of the bill.
Which is the part of the bill that there was some uncomfortability with. So,
if I recall, that was mostly the pieces where we were trying to determine who would be eligible for the licenses that were created. At this point, the bill in front of you does not create any additional licenses. And so this piece has been altered.
So, Senator Harris, what I'm going to do is we'll continue with the work session. I am going to vote. I'm going to accept a motion on your third amendment, understanding that this is going to have to be discussed, and I'm going to reserve my right on this one. and then I will get it out of committee because I feel very strongly about folks being able to talk about this new cannabis single license structure within a hearing, but that could also be handled in finance where this bill will probably go. So do we have additional comments?
I guess, Madam Chair, so I'm willing, so I was the one who, during the hearing on the bill, who expressed the concern for the public that because we had this round of licenses that were released in 2018, I believe, and they were still released under the constitutional construct that we didn't have the ability to change, is my understanding. They were all released as adult use licenses because they're the cap on the medical licenses. And so I think that is confusing for the public. And I am actually more of an advocate. I mean, I'm fine with it all, but for medical patients, if there's a closer dispensary in their neighborhood, but it's only adult use and they have to go farther purely because of the licensing issues, I was the one who was interested in seeing every adult use be able to do medical because I didn't see that as a significant expansion of the industry, but I did see it as a convenience and service to the end user and the public. So I do think we discussed that. I don't know that we got down to the detail level. I was picturing it more as those 40 could get an additional medical license, and we would still keep the two separate structures until the CCB had the opportunity to decide what they wanted to do through regs, potentially to, does it make more sense to have just one license? Does it make sense to have two licenses? But you could always get both is the thing, with the exception, and I think it's a critical exception, unless local government doesn't approve adult recreational in their jurisdiction, and then therefore you cannot. So I believe that this bill does that with the Third Amendment. So I'm willing to make the motion to amend do pass with the Third Amendment. And what I would like to do is say amend do pass with the Third Amendment and re-refer to finance so that we are all very clear that I think it will go to finance regardless, but we'll know for sure that it will go to finance, and then we can have this conversation in greater detail.
And I will thank you, Vice Chair Ratty. I will accept that as a motion.
Need a second? Do you need a second?
Yeah, I need a second.
Sorry, yeah, I'll second.
Are there any questions on this motion?
A little discussion, Madam Chair.
Yeah, Senator Kekeffer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to oppose the motion. I have concerns about a couple of things. One is the idea that it will default to...
Senator Kekeffer,
we can't hear you.
You can't hear me. I'm sorry. Better? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna oppose the motion. I've got a couple of concerns. First is with all due respect to Mr. Klimas and his board, I don't necessarily think we should probably give them more direction over what we want in statute. If we're going to say that local governments need to retain that authority, I don't think that's something we need to punt to them and have them put into reg. And I think more importantly, for my purposes, we've got 50 outstanding licenses that haven't been perfected yet, and I think authorizing a study that could create up to an unknown number of new licenses is certainly a step too far from me. So I just feel uncomfortable. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any additional comments?
Chair Neal.
Yeah, Senator Sievers-Gansett.
Thank you, Chair Neal. I, too, will not be supporting the motion. I think if we want to make sure local government has control over what they have in their community, we need to put that in statute. I also think the language is open-ended, and there's already been a couple of studies as far as market evaluations, and they differed substantially. And leaving it open-ended, I think, is a concern instead of having a maximum cap. And we do have 50 licenses that are outstanding right now that are not perfected, but are outstanding. So there's quite a few licenses that are out there in addition to the 81 that we currently are currently working, I guess, or in production. So I too will oppose the motion. Thank you.
Okay. So,
Senator Dennis.
Senator Dennis.
So just I guess a quick question, comment first. I still have some questions. I'm willing to vote to move it forward. But I think that, there's just a lot of stuff been thrown out. But I think in order to keep it moving, I'm willing to vote for it today, and just want to be able to see that once I get to see it. The second question that I have is, can we do a motion to pass it out and then re-refer, or do we just need to wait till it gets to the floor and then re-refer it? Just wondering because of the deadlines, if we I guess we're moving it to the floor first and then it would get re-referred. Otherwise it would die, I would assume.
I think if we take the amend due pass action, that's a final action. And the re-refer is just a second thing that we're doing. But staff.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
So, Mr. Reel, do you want to weigh in on that? Is that the way that Vice Chair stated, the way I understood that it worked?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Joe Reel with the Fiscal Analysis Division. The staff understanding that the actual action item might be more appropriate to amend and re-refer, which will send it to the Senate floor with the amendment and then to be re-referred. But it's not amend and do pass, but amend and re-refer.
Does the amend and re-refer kill it? Or does it live for deadline?
Is that a final action, right?
It's a final action to come out of the committee and send it to the Senate floor. And then you can handle the re-referral at that point.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
In interest in making this less complicated, I would make I don't know if we want to go through the process. I'll make a motion to rescind my motion.
Okay. So, yeah, please do.
I just rescind my motion.
And then we need that to be seconded, right?
Yep, and I'm okay with that. I made the second, so.
Okay.
So I will make a new motion just to amend do pass, and then we'll just make sure to catch it on the floor.
Okay. So, all right. So we have a motion to amend and do pass. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. Any discussion on this motion?
So I would just like to add one more set of comments. So I do think I share some of the concerns that Senator Sievers-Gansert and Senator Kieckepfer shared. So I do want to make sure that the sponsor knows that we need significantly greater clarity on the local government control issue, on whether or not this opens it to CCB to be able to create new licenses without it having to come back to the legislature, and any impact on fees. At least for me, those are the questions I'm going to have before I would be comfortable voting with the board on floor.
And Chair Neal, Senator Harris, for the record, I just want to commit to the entire committee that I am willing to have further discussions and am open to making it very clear, if we have to in statute, that local communities retain control over what types of products are sold in their jurisdictions.
Okay. So, go. Who? Senator Dennis, or who?
Madam Chair, this is your staff, Russell.
Oh, Mr.
And so what I wouldn't mind just offering, so that we're all on the same page, is that the bill currently doesn't have a positive fiscal impact, and thus it's not denoted as eligible for exemption. But I believe, based on the testimony and based on the questions asked by Senator Kieckepfer regarding the potential negative impact on the fees, I will, if you amend and pass this bill out, then I'll have to, when that amendment is, if that amendment is processed by the Senate, the bill goes in the first reprint, then I'll have the conversation with Wayne Thorley as Senate fiscal analyst, that the bill would have a potential negative impact on revenues, and thus it would get referred to finance anyway, and then the eligibility for exemption would attach. So I think that's just for everybody how probably this is going to proceed forward. And then once that exemption would attach, then we have the bill in finance to continue to work the issue.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Gendon. Okay. So we had the motion on the table to amend and do pass. I had a second, and now we were at discussion on the amend and do pass motion. Any discussion, which I think in general, it is straight uncomfortability. But I will, I will listen to you, or we just do the roll call and everybody can say their reservations.
Yeah, Chair Neal, I have the same concerns. Thank you.
Okay.
Ditto.
All right. Okay. So, Secretary, will you do the roll call vote? I think everybody is, I don't know if people are like no with a reservation, so I need you to clarify that when he does the roll call so I can know, because this is a good learning opportunity for me. Okay, then. So, Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Dennis,
Yes, with reservation.
Senator Radu,
Yes, with reservations.
Senator Kieckeffer,
No, with no reservations.
Senator Severs-Gansert,
I'm a no, thank you.
Chair Neal.
Okay, and I'm a yes with I reserve my right to change. Okay, all right. So the motion passes with amend and do pass. You are off the hook, Senator Harris.
Thank you so much, Chair Neal and committee members. I will be speaking with you all shortly.
We're definitely giving you the floor statement. For
I will
sure.
take it. All right.
All right. So, Mr. Reel, hey, let's do the Jack in the Box. SB 346. Let's just do it. Let's throw it out there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Joe Reel, Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. Committee, your next bill on work session is Senate Bill 346. This bill imposes a tax on the retail sale of certain digital products, sponsored by Senator Neal, heard in this committee on April 6th. Senate Bill 346 provides for the imposition of an excise tax on the retail sale or use of specified digital products, which includes digital audio works, digital audio visual works, digital books, digital code, and other digital products at a rate equal to the sales and use tax rate in the county where the specified digital product is purchased or used. Proceeds from the taxes are distributed in the same proportion and manner as the sales and use tax. The bill also imposes an excise tax on the gross receipts derived from providing direct-to-home satellite television service to a customer in the state. The bill defines the direct-to-home satellite television service and requires payments for the tax on the gross proceeds derived from providing the direct-to-home satellite television service to be credited to the state general fund and to the account to stabilize the operation of state government, also known as the rainy day fund. Work session document summarizes individuals that testified in support. Neutral, there was no opposition to the bill. During the hearing, committee will recall Senator Neal presented two conceptual amendment documents. Those are attached to the work session and also summarized here. Going through those amendments, amendment number 1 would delete sections 118 through 138 of the bill to remove the excise tax on direct-to-home satellite service. Amendment number 2 would amend section 21 to reflect the deletion of sections 118 to 138 as provided in number 1. And would also need to clarify that while direct-to-home satellite television service and video service are not considered to be specified digital products pursuant to this section, direct-to-home satellite providers and video service providers are subject to the provisions of the bill with respect to any sales of specified digital products which additional consideration is paid. Amendment number 3 would add provisions to section 94 to specify that a provider of direct broadcast satellite service as defined by federal code or a cable operator as defined by federal code would be a marketplace facilitator, for applications on the platform that charge consideration for use that are bundled through a marketplace platform. And it would exclude the applications that are free. Amendment number 4 would amend subsection 3 of section 21 of the bill to clarify that the digital code definition, that the digital code does not include a public or private keys when used in a transaction conducted on the blockchain. And the proposed amendment would identify the definitions of blockchain, private key, and public key with respect to this section based on provisions of current law. And following the hearing on the bill, Senator Neal came forward with an additional amendment, amendment number 5. The intent of this particular amendment is to have any fees, taxes, interest, or penalties collected from the digital products tax rate imposed in a county that are attributable to the 2.25% sales and use tax rate imposed pursuant to NRS 377.040 be distributed to the county in which the tax was collected or sourced and not required to be separated into portions deemed attributable to the basic C county relief tax proceeds under the 0.5% rate, which are distributed pursuant to NRS 377.055, and the supplemental city county relief tax proceeds under the 1.75% rate that are distributed pursuant to NRS 377.057. So this amendment would go into section 114 and add a subsection 3, which provides that payments credited to an account pursuant to paragraph 2 attributable to the tax imposed on the sales and retail of tangible personal property and use due on the purchase of tangible personal property for use in this state pursuant to NRS 377.040 must be distributed to each county based on the county in which fees, taxes, interest, or penalties were sourced pursuant to Section 129 of this act. And legal would correct any references with respect to the section references there. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So I wanted to make sure we had Amendment 6, which was from Chelsea Capurro about DISH, which legal will roll into this, which states, so in section 21, sub 2, that the term does not include, that the term specified digital products does not include a provider of direct broadcast satellite service as defined in 47 USC 335B5, and then video service as defined in NRS 711.141. So it's a slight nuance change that Dish and AT&T had asked for to really clarify. It just deleted portions of those sentences to create a different, the same phrase minus parts of a sentence. So that would be amendment number 6. Legal will have to roll that in, but I just wanted to state that for the committee and for the listeners, or who were the stakeholders in our meetings over the past year, AT&T and Dish, that was also an adopted amendment number 6. Okay, now I'm ready. Any discussion on SB 346?
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, Senator Ratty.
I'm sorry, I don't remember hearing this bill.
Digital goods? I was just like, what? You don't remember the Elvis Christmas album? Nobody can forget that one. I don't.
Oh, it's that one. Oh, okay.
That one.
Would just comment that there are 6 amendments, and I love 6 amendments. I think you just doubled Senator Harris's tally there. So generally am supportive of the bill, but would just say that I'm going to need to digest some of the details once we see it all in a single document.
I get it. Any additional comments from members? Okay, so I will accept a motion to amend and do pass.
Amend, do pass.
Do you have a second?
I will second.
Okay, any comments on the motion?
Comment?
Yeah, Senator Sievers-Ganser.
Thank you, Chair Neal. So I'm not going to be supporting this motion. This is a significant change in our tax policy, and we have a number of amendments, and I just feel like the this process is not conducing to getting as much input as we typically would. And so I'm concerned about the vetting process. So at this time, I'm not going to be supporting the bill or the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, so that's Senator Kekeffer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on this bill, I will be supporting this motion to move the bill out of committee. I'm going to reserve my right to change my vote on the floor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Secretary, will you please call?
Madam Chair. This is Senator Dennis. I just wanted that same disclosure. I want to be able to see it all in one place. So I just, I'm going to support it, but, I want to make sure I have the opportunity to see that before, when it gets before it gets to the floor.
Got it. Understood. All right, so Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Ratty,
Yes.
Senator Kekeffer,
Yes.
Senator Sievers Gansert,
No.
Chair Neal.
Yes. Okay, so I will, so the motion passes. I will assign the floor statement to me. Thank you for the indulgence of the Thursday before deadline. All right, so we will move to the next one. Mr. Reel, can we move to SB 389, peer-to-peer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Joe Reel, Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. Next bill on work session is Senate Bill 389. This bill establishes provisions governing a peer-to-peer car sharing programs, sponsored by Senator Neal, heard in this committee on April 6th. The summary of this bill is based on proposed amendment 316 to Senate Bill 389, which was presented by Senator Neal during the hearing. The bill requires a peer-to-peer car sharing program to collect from each shared vehicle driver a governmental services fee of 10%, the total amount for which the vehicle was shared through the program, plus any additional fee imposed on the sharing of a vehicle authorized by counties. Currently, there's a rate of 2% that is imposed in Clark and Washoe counties. The bill requires the peer-to-peer car sharing program to remit such fees to the Department of Taxation, along with a quarterly report. It specifies that the peer-to-peer car sharing program is required to maintain certain records. The bill requires money received from the peer-to-peer car sharing program pursuant to the bill to be deposited to the state general fund. Individuals testified on the measure as summarized in the work session document. With respect to amendments, there were two proposed amendments. Basically, the first amendment is the proposed amendment 3163 that was presented by Senator Neal during the hearing. Second amendment was discussed during the hearing, and it would amend the bill to include provisions establishing an MOU to allow the Department of Taxation to collect the sales tax on behalf of those that do not pay sales tax at the time the vehicle is purchased. And with that, Madam Chair, I can answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions on SB 389? Okay. So seeing no questions, I'll take a motion to amend and do pass.
Amend, do pass?
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion. Secretary, will you do the roll call?
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Ratty,
Yes.
Senator Kekeffer,
Yes.
Senator Sievers Gansert,
Yes.
Chair Neal.
Yes. All right, so the amend to pass, the motion was unanimous. Once again, I will give this floor statement to me. SB 389. Mr. Reel, SB 395.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Joe Reel with the Legislative Council Bureau. Committee, your final bill on work session today is Senate Bill 395. This bill revises provisions governing the funding of capital projects for school districts in certain counties, sponsored by Senator Gokachia and heard in committee on April 1st. Senate Bill 395 provides that if approved by voters, the Board of County Commissioners of a county whose population is less than 45,000, currently that is Churchill, Esmeralda, Eureka, Humboldt, Lander, Lincoln, Mineral, Nye, Pershing, Story, and White Pine counties, shall levy a tax of not more than 25 cents on each $100 of assessed valuation of taxable property within the county to be used for capital projects of the school district. The bill provides that the rate established pursuant to the bill must not be included in the total ad valorem tax levy for the purposes of the application of the limitation in NRS 361.453, which provides that the total ad valorem tax levy for all public purposes must not exceed $3.64 on each $100 of assessed valuation. Additionally, the bill specifies that the amount of any tax imposed pursuant to the bill is exempt from the provisions of current law, which generally limit annual increases in property taxes to between 3% and 8%. In the work session document summarizes the testimony on the bill, and there are no amendments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Any discussion? Okay, so I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
You're muted, Madam Chair.
Like it's just automatically does it on its own. Okay, so I had a first from Senator Dennis, a second from Senator Kekeffer. Any discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Severs-Gans.
Thank you. I'm going to support the motion because this is going to go to a vote of the people. So I'll be supporting the bill. Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments? All right, so Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Ratty,
Yes.
Senator Kekeffer,
Yes.
Senator Severs-Gansert,
Yes.
Chair Neal.
Yes. Okay, so the motion passes. I will assign the floor statement to Senator Gokachia. All right, so that doesn't necessarily conclude our work session because we have to hear two bills, and then those two bills will roll to work session after. So thank you, Mr. Reel. I will go ahead and open up for SB 255, which creates the Office of Supplier Diversity. This should be quick. So I thought for a really, really long time about this particular bill and trying to create an Office of Supplier Diversity, and the opportunity came up this year. One of the initial, the reasons why were, either 2005, 2007, legislation passed out of the legislature to create the Regional Business Advisory Council. It is also one of your exhibits for this bill. And so what's been happening in the South has been roughly 40 agencies who are under the Clark County administration, where they come together and they talk about procurement contracts with the Las Vegas Water Authority, the library districts, the counties, the cities, and various other political subdivisions. And they get together and they talk about the MeBe-Weebie spend, right? The minority spend, small business spend on women, et cetera. And so it's been a thought pattern to try to figure out how to connect what was happening with RBDAC, who submits a report to the governor every 2 years since roughly 2005, 2007, to try to connect it to our Office of Economic Development under GOED. So I went to Director Brown and I said, I really want to try this. Do you think you could support this idea? And so this language came from, I guess, the creation of what is built in Nevada, and also talking to the chairman of the RBDAC committee, which is down south. And so what you have in front of you is the the language that represents our first step into creating this. And in addition, the bill also tries to connect our emerging small business program, which was the small business program that was created under Assemblywoman Bustamante Adams in 2017, which she created a threshold to try to bring emerging small businesses under GoEd to help them find a way to get contracts. And there was a threshold of like $1 million to $3 million where those businesses could go in and attempt to get assistance. So the way the emerging small business system works, if anybody has ever used it, you go in, you fill out like a piece of paper that says you are an emerging small business. You pretty much verify, self-certify that you fit this criteria. You're eligible under that criteria to then become a part of a procurement system.
I apologize.
And so, hello?
I'm so sorry to interrupt. It's Vice Chair Reddy.
Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting. I am chairing right now because you're presenting the bill.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm literally like in my own thing. I thought you said you had to go to work session. So we're asking you, Dennis?
I do have to go to work session. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm handing the gavel off to Senator Dennis, who is now chairing, so that I can run to work session.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going to need luck on this day. All right, then.
Continue.
Senator Dennis.
Yeah, go ahead and continue.
Okay. So the idea was to try to figure out how to take what was currently happening, where you could go into GoEd right now, and the locals, the RBDAC committee was not connected, and the emerging small business are not connected, and to try to build some coordination between these series of activities that were similarly doing the same thing, except for RBDAC was probably one of the oldest consortium groups created through statute, where it was focused on the minority business spend, women spend, and I added the disability, where they were working with political subdivisions to talk about, are you giving contracts to small businesses? And so the bill attempts to coordinate and create an Office of Supplier Diversity that then builds a relationship between GoEd, RBDAC, merges the emerging small business development, which has been there since 2017, that has not had an administrator, a part-time person to help move that program along, to try to make sure that we could build a house around procurement in the state of Nevada, to make sure that the report that has been going to the governor, whoever the governor was since 2007, that the report from RBDAC is actionable, because it was set out in law that it was supposed to be actionable, that this was information that was supposed to go to the governor, and then this report was supposed to help the state understand what was happening with small business procurement, what was happening with minority business procurement since way back when. So that is ultimately what the bill does. And so in section 1, it just lays out what would be the criteria, or what are the tasks, I will say, of the Office of Supplier Diversity, building on existing behaviors and then establishing what should this office do and how they should perform. So that's in section 1. And then in section 2, basically it takes the GoEd office, and then it adds the Office of Supplier Diversity under the Division of Economic Development, Motion Pictures, etc. The way that the bill was written was not to remove the Clark County administration that was going on, but to build a coordinating activity between the county and the state so that we're all operating on the same page for procurement, and there is an alignment around goals, and there is a process that is happening statewide. So with that, I will open myself up for questions.
questions? Let's see. Let me make sure I can see everybody. All right. Do we have any? I don't see anybody raising their hand. So do you have other presentations?
I don't believe so. I mean, Mr. Brown is on. If I don't know if you wanted to comment, or Mr. Hume, I don't know.
Michael Brown, Director of the Governor's Office of Economic Development. You may recall at the overview hearing that we had at the beginning of the session, I talked about the PETS program that we had rolled out for small business, and particularly to help disadvantaged and minority businesses. Since then, the Urban Institute they did a conference on the effect of the pandemic on minority and small business, and I participated in that. And they noted that these businesses were hit particularly hard by the pandemic, and that the SBA's PPP program largely missed those businesses in its first round. And they said, though, and this was good news for Nevada, they said that the difference was made up by programs authorized by state and local governments, such as the PEPS and CREG program that we rolled out. But during that process, we learned about the vulnerability of these businesses. We also at GOAD house the PTAC program, which is the federally chartered procurement program with the Defense Department and other federal agencies. So we have an existing staff that works on helping small businesses and minority businesses and veteran-owned businesses and others win federal contracts. Their work, though, is fairly prescribed. And has to meet the federal guidelines. The Urban Institute, when we got into the what should we do next discussion at this forum that I participated in, they said with the large infrastructure bill that's coming through the Congress and the rescue funds that are coming through, they said it would be very important for state and local governments to prioritize the procurement process for small and minority and veteran-owned businesses. And so this legislation that the senator has brought is very timely on a policy basis, and we're prepared to assist. We also have this emerging small business program, and it was staffed for a few years, and then a vacancy occurred in the new period of austerity that we're in right now with the regular budget. You know, we just don't have the resources right now to justify filling that position. If this program were to come into place, there would be more than enough justification, particularly with the federal funds that will start to flow to help these small businesses win these contracts. We have just enough office space at this point to accommodate that persons, and if the legislature wishes to do that, it would complement the existing PTAC program that we have. So, thank you.
And I want to thank you, Director Brown. I did not forget about you and Mr. Hume. I think this has just been a very special hearing today and Thursday. So thank you. And I love your typewriter in the back.
Oh, thank you. It's part of the collection.
All right. Yes, Senator Stevens-Gansert.
Thank you, Chair. So I had a question for Mr. Brown. You know, I was looking at the fiscal note, and I think this is an extremely important program, and I agree with you that we have significant dollars that will be coming down from the federal government, potentially through the state, and available to businesses. So my question was, do you have individuals in your office that can help with this, or do you have to hire new people? Is there a way to be able to do this with some of the resources that you currently have?
If this program were to come to pass, we need to add additional resources. We need a program manager who's doing this and the emerging small business program, and this becomes their focus. What you experience with small business is there's lots of them. And it's a data-intensive process, and so we need clerical support and IT support for that. There's lots of them, and then we have 13 or 14 different chambers of commerce that are in that space also. And this kind of work is kind of really only because we have PTAC do we have any experience in this area, and so it's kind of outside the traditional economic development work, but it complements what we have with PTAC.
Thank you. I have one follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So given that we are contemplating the dollars that are coming down from the federal government and just so much more money, I guess that's going to be available for contracts like this? And I know we don't have the guidelines, but do you foresee that there will be federal dollars available for this related to COVID? Because some of the, if not all the grants could be related to COVID CARES Act type dollars and rescue dollars.
Oh, Michael Brown, Governor's Office of Economic Development. I am not qualified to answer that. I just don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
Can't venture a guess. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Not hearing, not seeing any. Okay. Senator Neal, do you have any other presentations before I go to the support testimony?
No, that's it. And I don't know who's all going to be on the line because I didn't get a chance to like really throw the fish hook out there, but we shall see.
Okay. All right. With that, we will go to support testimony. So those wishing to give support, if the BPS could queue up the first caller.
Thank you, Senator Dennis. If you would like to offer support for SB 255, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once more, that's *9 now to offer support to SB 255. Caller with the last 3 digits, 938. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ariel Edwards, ARIELLEEDWARDS, on behalf of the City of North Las Vegas, testifying in support of Senate Bill 255. The City of North Las Vegas is in full support of this measure and would like to thank Senator Neal for bringing this forward. As the largest majority-minority city in the state, we believe that outreach, training, and providing opportunities and support to minority-owned small businesses, women-owned small businesses, and small businesses owned by persons with a disability will only continue to aid in the growth of our economy and enrich our community at large. We urge the committee's support and passage of Senate Bill 255. Thank you so much for your time and consideration today.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
If there are any other callers wishing to offer support for SB 255, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Senator Dennis. It appears there are no callers wishing to voice support for SB 255 at this time.
Thank you. Let's go to those in opposition.
To voice your opposition to SB 255, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once more, that's *9 now to offer opposition to SB 255. Thank you, Senator Dennis. It appears there are no callers wishing to offer opposition to SB 255.
Okay, let's go on then to callers in neutral.
To offer neutral testimony to SB 255, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once more, *9 now to offer neutral testimony to SB 255. Thank you, Senator Dennis. It appears there are no callers wishing to offer neutral testimony at this time.
Okay, thank you. Go back to Senator Neal. Any closing comments?
Yes, I want to thank the committee for hearing this bill. I think this is a good first step to start creating procurement opportunities statewide, building upon existing efforts that have been in play for over 15 years, and to try to really build ourselves as a state that focuses on procurement opportunities for small businesses, because number one, it grows their base. It allows them to expand in their employee pool, which also expands wages, which in turn has an indirect effect on our economy. These are all great things for our economy as a state as we pivot and come out of the pandemic, that we are then able to, I think, offer support for the small businesses that are seeking to get contracts in order to create more independence and stability for themselves. And so with that, I will close there.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on Senate Bill 255.
Oh, the next one's 281. Yeah.
Sorry, why am I looking at the wrong one?
I don't know.
Is it?
It's SB 281 on him.
We're closing the hearing on SB 255, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. And so are you presenting 281 also?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and open the hearing on SB 281.
Okay, SB 281. So SB 281 is a bill that is very unique and interesting. So Department of Agriculture, the Nevada Department of Agriculture, wants to engage in safety and health regulations around CBD. What was found out in this process is that, number one, you don't really know if CBD is truly CBD in what you're buying in these various retail establishments. And so the concept that I came up with to, number one, help Department of Ag try to inspect and go forward in connection with Health and Human Services is to do an excise tax. There is only one state, Louisiana, apparently does it at 3% for CBD. The goal and the focus of the excise tax is to help them pay for the administration, which from the way that the amendment is, would be structured between HHS, which currently has a statute which allows them to go in and look at the labeling and testing of hemp. And so in order to try to figure out how to deal with the administration and the co-responsibility that would exist between Department of Ag and HHS, it seemed to make sense in a non-budget cycle where we were trying to figure out how to come up with money to fund our state to do a minimal excise tax of 3%, which is the amendment to the bill. It's not 1%, but a 3% excise tax in order to pay for these efforts so that safety regulations and health regulations could be extended to these products. Currently, they are unregulated in the market. You don't know if the content is safe, if they've truly done what they were supposed to do. So this bill attempts to get at that issue. So the amendment in front of you all has been worked through between the Division of Health and Human Services, the Department of Agriculture, and we've also talked to the Department of Tax. So what's super important to note, and I'm going to work backwards, is the effective date. So the effective date in the back of the bill is actually going to be amended out. It will be effective January 1st, 2022 for regulations, but it won't be effective for collection until January 1st, 2023. And here's the reason why. Department of Taxation is going to a computer system which will allow them to take on the retail component of this bill. We contemplated the wholesale, just applying this to wholesalers, but it seemed to make sense in the long term, discussing the fiscal impacts and what really is going on in the space and what the attempt is to regulate and inspect, is that it should apply to retail. So I did the extension of the effective date to, number one, give Department of Taxation time to get their computer system up, two, and time to work out the regulatory process, which would be a co-sharing between two departments in order to inspect. In addition, to find out, give notice to the retailers that this is currently going to be in play and that they would now be subject to inspection and labeling content to determine if what they are selling is truly CBD and not going to have a negative effect on our citizens of the state of Nevada in a way that causes illness or anything else. So that is the public policy purpose of the bill and the reason why that effective date is there. So I will do a high level, like super, super high level of 281. So if you look at section 5, it defines the excise tax. Section 6, retail sale, because that is largely where majority of this activity is happening. If you look at provisions in Section 9, where it says each person is responsible for the records, and then in Section 10, the accuracy, filling out the return. It's my understanding that in Section 9, this is existing language that comes from NRS 372.735. In addition, the language on the payment for inspection, I believe, is language that is adopted that's currently in our statutes. Section 11, which discusses how the excise tax would be imposed. The amendment, which we weren't able to get to, would strike out that 1% and place that at 3%. And then when you get to Section 12, the department would then go in and determine the consumable hemp products that the excise tax would be paid on. And then the rest are the refund mechanisms that are in place in 360. And then it continues on with the existing 360 sales tax statutes. And then you have the judicial review, which is all standard conforming language that's currently in play in the statute. So what we did was just insert this excise tax and make it perform just the same way as the existing 372, 360 would work. The only difference is that the excise tax, some of it goes to administration, and then some of it would go to the education account that was remaining. And the reason why we did that in the bill was to try to make sure that, there's been a thought pattern that anything that was kind of cannabis-based or cannabis-like or esque would go to education. So that would be the excess. When you go to Section 27, it talks about the department, meaning Health and Human Services, and how hemp has the meaning ascribed under 557160, and then it spells out THC, and then it goes forward talking about on Section 34 that the department or health authority may investigate apparent violations of the provision, and then in that it continues on in 35 about the authority to determine violations, Board of Health adopting regulations, and then the rest is kind of conforming. And then there's a deletion at the back of the repealed sections. And so with that, because I know that we're running out of time and people have other committees and we have work sessions, I will open myself up for questions. I also have help on the line from Department of Ag. So if you're going to ask me anything about hemp, please ask Department of Ag. And I also have HHS. I believe there are members from HHS on, which can speak to their existing statutory authority to inspect the labeling of products. And hemp would be a new category, or this particular it's called a cannabidiol. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. I can't pronounce that one. So I'm opening myself up for questions.
Cannabinoid. Okay. Any questions? Let me switch to the right view here. Yes. Do we have any questions before we hear testimony? I'm not seeing any.
Okay.
All right. So if none, then and you have no further testimony.
So, Ms. Jepson, did you want to say anything to maybe properly? Maybe you could pronounce what that cannabinoid. Listen, do you have anything to add?
Sure. For the record, Ashley Jepson, Chairman. Am I good to?
Yes, please go, please.
Thank you. For the record, Ashley Jepson with the Nevada Department of Agriculture. So just for clarification, Department of Agriculture approached Senator Neal about some of the challenges with unregulated cannabidiol, which is CBD. Most people, that's what they recognize it from. It is extracted from the flower of the hemp plant, and it's considered a drug by FDA. So that's part of why it tends to be in this unregulated kind of gray area. So we've appreciated Senator Neal's attention to this specific issue. We've been working with Health and Human Services and looking at what's existing and what other legislation is in place or in the works to try to address this issue. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there's any clarity that's needed on how hemp's regulated or kind of our hemp program as a whole. I'm certainly available. I hope that helped. Let me know if you want me to explain.
No, it did. I just needed somebody to actually be an expert on CCB because.
Senator Keycover.
Thank you. And I appreciate, I think you're trying to do. So, Ms. Jepson, are we in a situation where people are being harmed by these products because they're not regulated? What are we trying to get? I don't think the problem has been clearly identified for me of the problem that we're trying to solve.
For the record, Ashley Jepson, Nevada Department of Agriculture. So the big challenge here is CBD is being put into food products. You see it really everywhere. You can see it at the gas station, and at this point in time, Health and Human Services and some of the other regulatory structures' hands have been tied because FDA considers it a drug. So it's technically not supposed to be added as a food ingredient. It's not supposed to be making any medical claims unless approved by FDA. So with that, that's the constraint that our current regulatory authorities are in. And this is trying to, we know these products are widely available. The facilities manufacturing them are not going through health inspections because they can't secure them. So that is the issue at hand, is trying to allow for these facilities to be inspected and to incorporate these products, because if it's happening, we'd rather it be done on a safer level. So the amendment, which I think there's our final amendment didn't quite get through, so we'll continue to work with Senator Neal on that. But the amendment is trying to capture what existing authority is available, what other opportunities are available to in the current session, and where we're trying to fill that gap. Happy to expand on anything.
Public health agencies in the state have authority over food inspection facilities right now, right?
For the record, Ashley Jepson, you cut out at the beginning, but I think you asked if HHS has authority over food facilities in the state. So I'm going to assume that was your question and move on. Okay. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Department of Ag typically stops once it's no longer an unmodified ag product. We just regulate the ag product typically. So we regulate the production of hemp in the field. And then once it leaves that point, it goes to Health and Human Services. They regulate the food manufacturing facilities. And this issue is actually at hand as well with SB 114.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see that Senator Ratty, Vice Chair Ratty's back, and so I'm going to turn the gavel back over to her.
Thank you. So I'm assuming we are on questions. Are there any other committee members who have questions? All right. Are we good to go to public testimony?
If there is any.
All right, great. Let's go ahead and open up the public testimony on SB 281.
Thank you, Vice Chair Ratty.
In support.
If you would like to speak in support of SB 281, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once more, that's *9 now to give support for SB 281. Thank you, Vice Chair. It appears there are no callers to offer support to SB 281.
How about opposition?
To voice opposition to SB 281, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, that's *9 now to voice opposition to SB 281. Thank you, Vice Chair. Once more, it appears there are no callers wishing to voice opposition at this time.
How about we go to neutral on SB 281?
If you would like to offer neutral testimony on SB 281, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 321, please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Neal and members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Doolittle, Lindsey Doolittle. I am an environmental health specialist supervisor with the Nevada Division of Public and Behavioral Health in the Department of Health and Human Services, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions for the department? Senator Keycover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So based on the idea that these things are everywhere, right? These products are everywhere. What level of staffing do you think you would need to conduct these type inspections appropriate to effectively ensure compliance with the law?
Typically, regulatory authority for food establishments and food products are split among the 4 health jurisdictions. So DHHS typically has direct authority in the rural and frontier counties, the others in their respective county jurisdictions, so I cannot speak to them. I do know that that is one of the things we were looking at if this were to go forward, whether or not we would develop a fiscal note and how we would proceed. I don't believe that has yet been done.
Okay, thank you.
So, staff, do we know if this is one of the bills that has the language in the bill where we can move it without a fiscal note?
Mr. Reel or Mr. Gendon?
For the record, Joe Reel, I am checking into that one moment.
Thank you, and I'm trying to get to the right place on Nellis too to see what the fiscal note situation is.
Yeah, we actually have fiscal notes. NDA, because they were going with HHS, withdrew theirs, but tax has one. So we actually have actual fiscal notes in the exhibits.
Okay, so then to the caller, and I'm sorry, I've dropped your name. You may still put an additional fiscal note on it. Is that what you're saying?
I am not entirely certain. I would need to check with the other program management, but if DHHS is going to have additional responsibilities, that is a possibility.
Okay, and then I'm sorry that I'm fumbling with my nose to try to get there. Are there fiscal notes from the health departments?
Not at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, that will close public testimony, and I'll bring it back to the sponsor.
Hey, thank you guys for hearing this bill. Hopefully you can support it. I think we have good intent, which is to try to regulate what is currently being unregulated in Nevada for safety purposes. The reason why the 3% excise tax is in there, to try to pay for the administration of going out and inspecting, whether or not it's a co-responsibility between Department of Ag and HHS. And the reason why the excise tax was created at the 3% was to try to generate revenue off of the retail product so that they could go out and inspect. knowing that we were coming into a session where we have budget constraints. So that was the purpose behind the excise, to pay for the administration, so they could properly go out and be funded to check labeling and inspect these products, which are in a lot of places. And those will be my closing comments, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Just anybody else on the committee have any final comments or thoughts on this bill? All right, I'm not seeing anything. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 281. And I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So what we are going to do is go into a work session on the existing language for, what is that, SB 255. The bill as presented in committee is the form. So Mr. Reel, can I turn this over to you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Joe Reel, Deputy Fiscal Analyst at the Fiscal Analysis Division. Committee on work session now is Senate Bill 255. This bill creates the Division of Supplier Diversity within the Office of Economic Development, sponsored by Senator Neal and heard in committee today. As presented, the bill creates the Office of, the Division of, creates the Division of Supplier Diversity within the Office of Economic Development. The bill specifies the duties of the office as outlined in the bill to conduct an outreach, minority-owned small businesses, women-owned small businesses, and small businesses owned by persons with a disability to inform such businesses of both the private and public sector contracting opportunities, provide information, education, training, and assistance to minority-owned small businesses, women-owned businesses, and small businesses owned by persons with disability to assist those businesses in obtaining state and local government contracts. It also requires the development of implementing an online data dashboard with certain information. With respect to the amendments, the bill was presented based on proposed amendment 3227 to the bill, which is available in Nellis as well. Primarily, the amendment removes the small business designation and replaces it with a local emerging small business reference. That's primarily the changes that are throughout the bill. Also revises some of the provisions of the newly created office. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to answer any questions on Senate Bill 255.
Thank you for that. Any questions on SB 255? Okay, can I get a motion? Amend and do pass.
Amend, do pass.
Second.
Senator Dennis, any discussion on the motion? Senator Severs-Gansert?
I was going to ask about an emerging small business, just the definition of emerging small business before we had the motion, but I missed it.
Oh, yeah, no, I can answer that. So I don't know if Mr. Brown's on, but basically by bringing in emerging small business, it increases that threshold. So when we adopted it, I think it went up to, I think she had up to 10 million. So it really takes, and it's based on that gross revenue of a small business, but it took it all the way down to, I think, 3 million. So I know that it struck out small because we were adopting existing statute that we voted on, but I think it expands the base so that it allows not just a business that has gross revenue of maybe 300,000, but also one that's a little bit larger to expand and potentially be like a super millionaire company, which I'm perfectly okay with because we know that small businesses are in different levels in terms of their revenue, but they could be run by 4 people. So that was the goal.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think this is important legislation because these contracts are really complex, trying to become qualified and get registered and so forth. So I appreciate the legislation.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Okay. So any additional question on the comments on the motion? Okay. Seeing none. Secretary, will you do the roll call vote?
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Ratty,
Yes.
Senator Kieckeffer,
Yes.
Senator Severs Gansert,
Yes.
Chair Neal.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that. So the motion passes. I will assign this floor statement to me. Okay, so now we will move to SB 281. Mr. Reel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Joe Reel, Deputy Fiscal Analyst at the Fiscal Analysis Division. Committee, our next bill on work session is Senate Bill 281, which enacts provisions relating to certain products containing hemp, sponsored by Senator Neal and heard in committee today. This bill repeals the requirement for the Department of Health and Human Services to regulate commodities and products that contain hemp, which are intended for human consumption, provides for the regulation of consumable hemp products by the State Department of Agriculture. As we just discussed the bill, I will move on to the amendments that were proposed, submitted by the Department of Agriculture and adopted by Senator Neal. Primarily, the amendment actually strikes the repeal of NRS 439.532 and reenacts those provisions. It clarifies the definition of consumable hemp products in Section 26 of the bill. And also deletes other provisions to be consistent with reinstating the provisions requiring the related to 439.532. And then additionally, Senator Neal, in the hearing today, made additional amendments to revise Section 11 to change the rate of the tax from 1% to 3%. And then also revising the effective date to clarify that the effective date of January 1st, 2022 is relative to development of regulations, and then with respect to the imposition of the tax becoming January 1st, 2023. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions? Sorry, any questions on SB 281?
I have a question. I apologize.
Yeah.
So I apologize. This was probably more appropriate for the hearing, but I missed a good portion of the hearing having to bounce back and forth. So if I could just get a couple of clarifications now that I've landed and settled in a little bit more. So we had this conversation, I believe, just 2 days ago. It's an excise tax, so it looks like a sales tax, feels like a sales tax. So are there SUTA implications at all for having this extra excise tax on this class of products?
So we did reach out to them, but I will let Mr. Gendon speak to that because I'm having a brain fog right now. Mr. Gendon, do you remember what Mr. Johnson told us?
Madam Chair, for the record, Russell Gendon, Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. I'm not sure what the implications may be for SUTA in terms of getting the official clarification from the gentleman at SUTA, because as Senator Ratty has stated, it is operating as a excise tax, and it does have the elements of the sales tax in it for administration purposes. So that would be something we would still have to get final confirmation from the staff at SUTA.
And then I think if I'm understanding the intent of it, that's where it ends as a sale tax. So it's not going to flow into C tax at all. It would purely just go to the Department of Ag, and then they could use it for the cost of implementing, and then anything left goes to the education fund. Is that still all correct?
Well, there's a small change to that. So it will be spread between HHS and Department of Ag in order to administer this, because Department of Ag rolled in NRS 557, because currently under statute, HHS has the ability to inspect labels and investigate. And so this is kind of like a shared responsibility. And so the 3% would spread across both of those entities so that they could properly administer, inspect businesses and the labeling content of CBD.
Okay. And so then for any business, so the way I understand this is going to work, any business that sells a food product that has CBD in it, and I'm assuming that's a beverage or a brownie or a wheat muffin.
I will let Ms. Jepson talk about that. I will let her talk about that.
For the record, Ashley Jepson, in response to your question, yes, there's a wide range of products that would have CBD oil specifically. So part of our amendment was clarifying in the language that it is a hemp-derived compound, because the gray area is for the area that's been designated as a drug by FDA. So any product that is encompassing a hemp-derived compound, which would include that CBD oil, would apply. So there's a very wide range of products out there, whether it's just the oil, or yes, it could be a retail product that has it infused, topicals. The definition would outline lotions and a number of things there as the bill reads as of now.
Okay. So then my question is, do we know for the retailers, I know Chair Neal, you do lots of stakeholder engagement. Do we know from the retailers their ability to sort of program around that different tax rate for this product? So if I'm buying it at a 7-Eleven, or I'm buying it at Raley's, or I'm buying it at Walmart, are they all going to be able to program for this differential tax rate?
So that's why the delayed implementation is there, to allow, when I talked to the Department of Tax about being able to program this in and what it looked like, it's easier if it's an electronic way to program this, where it's remitted in a different way. So we're not doing this paper sales tax form, but actually allowing it to be an electronically remitted and sent over to Department of Taxation. So the reason why I have the delayed implementation date in my amendment stated in committee is because Department of Tax they're planning on having a new computer system by 2023. And when we discussed what this would look like and how these new payers coming on would affect them, they felt the administration would be easier when they got their computer system. So we have the effective date of the 1st, 2022 for, to start the reg process, to do a couple of things. Number one, identify who those retailers are. And then when that reg process starts, they know exactly that this is out there, and then there's time. And then by 23, Department of Tax has their computer system up, which makes it easier for them to administer. Initially, we were looking at a wholesale because the wholesale tax, or tax on a wholesaler, fit within OTP and vape. But because that base is narrow, and when I kept seeing the amendment come back with retail, I said, well, we might as well just keep it retail, because that's really what it's going after, is the labeling and inspection. So I delayed the implementation so that it could be less burdensome and easier to administer through Department of Tax, which wouldn't create as much of a burden on the new taxpayer, who would then become a part of their base, because it would then be electronic remittance.
Okay. Apologize to everybody for using that much time to get caught up when I was out of committee. I appreciate the indulgence. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is your staff, Russell. In terms of looking through some of my notes as additional information for consideration to Senator Ratty's question about SUTA implications. Again, as I said, we would have to get the final confirmation, but we're not expecting there to be an issue because this isn't unlike the 10% retail excise tax on cannabis products. So this would be a 3% excise tax on the retail value. So since they're similar in structure, and we have not, right, we didn't have any problems with SUTA with regards to the 10% retail excise tax. So I just thought I would offer that as additional information that I had thought of for the committee's consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, the only reason why I did the excise is because there was no money. So, I wanted to, number one, help them for safety and to regulate this, which is unregulated now, allow them to jump into the space. And, you have to find a way in order to pay for the activity that you want. So if it can't be an appropriation, then typically, you try to find a way to fund it. And so that was why that 3% was there versus the 1%, because spread across two agencies who have a co-relationship to then go after multiple retailers, it made sense that the 3% would then pay for the administration and then the excess would go to the education account, fitting with the cannabis model that we had in the state of Nevada.
Great. I think it's back to you, Chair.
Okay. All right. So is there any discussion, any additional discussion? So I will accept a motion to amend and do pass.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Senator Dennis?
Sorry. In the testimony that we heard, somebody mentioned an amendment that was coming.
So,
what was that all about?
So it's up. So Ms. Jepson, can you talk about that? Because I was trying to see what the difference of that amendment was, which I just sent, which I think you just responded to me. The revision was reinstating the tax revenue to NDA, and they struck out the amendment to remove NDA from receiving the tax, since the rest of the bill is reinstating the authority for HHS through NRS 439. And that is the amendment that you guys have, except for when I discussed it in committee, I'm spreading it across both of the agencies. So that's the difference, because I'm like, it is going to cost Department of Ag. And I know that they think that HHS is going to be, is going to come under their authority, but Department of Ag has a role there. And I do think that there is some revenue that you're going to need to perform this task. You don't see it now, but you're going to see it later. So that's why the amendment that we discussed and what I discussed in committee is what we're going with.
So
I just kind of trumped their amendment. I did. Because
so you're saying that what your amendment overrides what she mentioned in the testimony?
Yes, because I saw that, and everything that I discussed in the hearing and this co-responsibility and the spreading of that 3% is how it should be, because I know there's going to be cost with that number of retailers out there, and Department of Ag's role, at least even if it's simply a reviewer and a co-manager, I know that there's going to be a cost there. So that the way I discussed it in committee is actually how it's going to go. Because we thought about it. I thought about what their amendment was, and I was just like, I know what the burden is going to be.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Keykever?
All right, maybe I missed this. How much is this going to raise?
That is a good question. We have not gotten to that point yet, but I don't think Mr. Gannon was able to run any numbers. Mr. Gannon, were you? I don't think you were, the way this week has been and last week.
For the record, Russell Gannon, Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. No, I think this will be a very difficult one because I think has been discussed here, the CBD containing products are pretty broad. And also in terms of their availability in stores, in terms of bricks and mortar stores, as well as being able to order them online and have them delivered to you. So I'm not very versed in the whole product line that is out there for consumers in the tangible personal property area. So I don't have an estimate for what 3% excise tax could potentially generate.
And that was part of the reason of having the timeline extended so that they could figure out who they're actually going to be inspecting and dealing with, get time to effectively do the reg, and bring in the proper amount of stakeholder conversation. And then in that following period of time, allow Department of Taxation to be able to electronically do this so that these are not paper filings. Because in Louisiana, it's all electronic, the 3% CBD. And from our discussions, it's easier for them to administer it that way, and it reduces the burden on this taxpayer who would then be susceptible to the 3%. So. So, any additional comments?
I guess just I have to ask her. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So I think I need some clarification on why you're not accepting their amendment, because I think what I hear being said, and I've lost a little track of what was said, but is DHHS doing all the inspections now?
So, Ms. Jepson?
The version that we're going to vote on is DHHS doing all of the inspections.
DHS is in the version that I had a hearing on. But Ms. Jepson, can you explain, are they fully doing it, or is this a co-relationship? Because I thought it was more of a co-relationship, that you were taking the existing statutory language so that you didn't have to recreate the inspection and labeling language, but you guys will work together.
For the record, Ashley Jepson. So I'm happy to provide some clarification. So a couple things went into the justification for our amendment. One being there's existing authority for health to require, that was passed through the 2019 legislative session, that requires hemp products that have CBD and THC to include it on their label. So Health and Human Services has already been going through the regulation adoption process to allow for the regulation of particularly imported products into Nevada. And as we've been working with Health and Human Services and Senator Neal, and through this legislative session, SB 114 came to our attention. And that is trying to address that allowing for a health facility or a permitted facility that's doing food products to add CBD and to maintain that licensure. So it would give local health authorities the ability to still license a facility that's using CBD, which is where part of the limitation was before. So that's the justification that came from why we proposed the amendment of striking the repealed language for 439 and allowing health to continue with that labeling for imported products to Nevada. And also our amendment details SB 114 filling that other big concern that we'd approached Senator Neal on. So that was why we struck our name from receiving the tax revenues, because we thought more of that would be going to Health and Human Services and to other regulators.
Right. But majority of everything else in what I discussed in committee is the same, minus that one provision of where that revenue goes. Because although you struck it out to HHS, I mean, you struck it out to yourself, I put it back. And then in committee said I wanted shared between the two entities. That's the only difference in the language I discussed in committee is who does the revenue go to? Because they sent me an amendment where they struck themselves out and then I put them back in. And then after reflecting on it, I felt that it should be shared between the two. That's the only change. The bill, CBD, HHS, and all of that is in the bill that I presented and discussed in committee.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not, it's just who the revenue was going to. And they took themselves out and I put them back in.
So I'm wondering, like, I'm willing to support the bill out of committee. I think I have some questions. I'm wondering, I'd like to get greater clarity on if we're raising the excise tax to cover the cost of doing the work, making sure I understand where the work lives, and maybe there's a way to structure the bill where it's a waterfall. So if most of the work is at DHHS, we cover the cost of that. If there's work at Department of Ag, then it flows to them. And then if there's anything left, it flows to the Department of Education, as opposed to doing a 50-50 split, which may or may not match up to who's actually doing the bulk of the work. Because I think the underlying concept of the bill is that it's a more like a fee structure to cover the cost of actually doing the work. So again, I'm willing to support it out of committee and then have some more discussion.
And thank you for that, Vice Chair. I agree with you. We just didn't have the time to really spell that out because I hear what you're saying and I understand what you're saying. And the intent is exactly what you're saying, which is it pays for the work. It pays for them to administer this, to inspect, and then go out, because these are additional entities that they're taking on because of the retail component of this. So, all right. So I know there's some thoughts, and I'm okay with however people land. So had I accepted a motion? I think I did. So can I get a motion on amend and do pass based on doing a shared revenue structure between DHS and agriculture based on workload, and the amendment that was discussed in committee by me, which has the blue, red, purple, and orange language. And it says proposed amendment SB 281 Plant Industry Division as the cover page. That is the amendment that was discussed in the hearing.
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? I'm sure there is.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Senator Dennis.
Yeah, so I have similar thoughts to what Senator Ratty was talking about on how we do that piece. I'm willing to vote it out, knowing that we're going to have some additional. I think this is something that, obviously has been brought forward that needs to be addressed, and so I'm willing to do that. Just want to feel comfortable as we come forward when I get to see what it looks like and see where the discussions go.
Makes perfect sense. Total. Okay.
I have a comment too.
Yeah, Senator Severs-Gansett.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be supporting the motion at this time. I think this is a substantial industry and we need to have regulations around it and testing around it, but it's unclear exactly the tax policy implications at this time. And so I'm going to be a no at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Senator Kekeffer.
What Heidi said.
Okay, all right, there we go. Thank you. Okay. So, Secretary, will you please do the roll call vote?
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Ratty,
Yes.
Senator Kekeffer,
No.
Senator Severs Gansert,
No.
Chair Neal.
Yes. Okay, so the motion passes for amended to pass. I understand everybody's concerns. I get it. I will take the floor statement if, I know this is going to go to finance, and I appreciate you guys help the vote on this to try to help me help Department of Ag get there. Okay. All right. So with that, we will close the work session on SB 281, and then we will open ourselves up for public comment because that concludes our business. There isn't anything else unless, so Vice Chair, Assistant Majority Leader, how are we just adjourning committees, or are we recessing if some mystical thing happens?
Chair, unless you've got a tax bill hiding someplace that I don't.
I am, as in the words of my other colleague, I am pretty much taxed out. Won't see anything from me for a while. Okay, so then we will adjourn. That is.
Go to public comment.
Oh, public comment. Is anyone on the line for public comment or Senate revenue? PPS?
Thank you, Chair Neal. If you would like to make public comment on today's meeting, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Once more, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue to offer public comment. Alrighty, Chair Neal. Looks like there are no callers wishing to offer public comment at this time.
Okay, thanks everybody for the afternoon. We got finished in enough time for everybody to go to their other committees. We will adjourn the Senate revenue.
Thank you, Chair.